talk about, I guess during and after second birth. Well, after second birth, what is second birth? And then how does this law differ after second birth?
The quickest way to say what happens is somebody on second birth, on the other side of second birth, 90% of their 4D body is cleansed. So you can imagine the law of assumption and how much things materialize, how fastly they materialize in their life because they're not being blocked by unconscious garbage that's in all of our 4D patterns. The more you're a master itself, that's part of the mastership. You don't become a master in Tai Chi Gong if your 4D body's not under control. Now, I'm fortunate because I can tune into 4 and 5D by just as fast as somebody changes a channel on their radio station, right? And because of that, I can see in somebody's auric field how fast they're cleaning up their 4D vibration. Second birth was a term that Master Rabbi Jesus used after he himself, well, two things, let me say. He had the Kundalini experience that the City Yoga's masters have been teaching Jimmy for thousands of years. And the way it's supposed to happen is that when you hit puberty between 12 and 16 years old, on a psychic level, you're supposed to go through puberty too, but most people don't. If we were in the golden age, it's like that, right? But unless you have a deep yearning for God, and this is why, some of your Catholic saints well went through, and you hear about their experience. I mean, Padre Pio. I mean, I read everything on Padre Pio. He's my favorite Catholic saint. And I had a visitation one time from Padre Pio. And man, he went through a second birth. And shortly afterward, he developed the stigmata and the bleeding, the wounds of Christ. But basically, it is the Kundalini experience. And Jesus referred to it because, see, it was actually ironically, Jesus is 24 on a mountain in Mount Kailash in northern India, where he finds out what he's supposed to do and who he is. And he learns about the Trinity, right? He learns it through Hindu teachings, ancient Hindu teachings, and he comes back and he says, "Wow, if I refer to it as the Father." So he was the one that gave the example of the family in the triad. So when he thought about that, he says, "Well, he knew the Essenes were triggering second birth too. He was raised up, educated by the Essenes, as you know, before the Magi took him on journeys to the Middle East and the Far East for more advanced training. So it was already in even his early childhood's training that he would go through this spiritual birth. So he started making reference to a second birth. And of course, even the apostles looked at him and said, "How are we supposed to get back into our mom's tummy when we're adults?" Because obviously, initially, they didn't understand what he was talking about because they were already grown men in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. And they did not come up through the Essenes, the mystical, esoteric group, the Essenes. And so they didn't know about that. Now, the Essenes were created by these elders that were totally dissatisfied with the direction the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin were taking the whole Jewish population. And they saw too much political agendas. So they decided to take their books and go out into nature. And little by little, the connection between them and the City Yoga masters of India, they started doing their spiritual practices that we've been talking about on the last few episodes. The siddhanas is the Sanskrit word, right to practice. And they all started to go through second birth themselves. So Mary's family, when you got to Mary, it was already 5 generations of her family being taught by the Essenes to make it. So a very young child, Jesus knows of second birth. So we're supposed to go through second birth. With some people, it can happen within a couple of years. With a lot of people, it's decades depending on you, how much you believe into it, how much you pursue the spiritual disciplines and you embrace them. And to be honest with you, how dirty your 4D body is.